Just wanted to update you on my project so I can help you out with your project. So you'll find this at that link inside Blackboard where you can see everybody's project and how they grow, and all of this is online. So not a lot has changed on my homepage. I still have that flower. I've got a caption underneath my flower, put a border around that. I did add a sitemap here in my footer. I just think that that's kind of neat when you get down to the footer to have that option to also hit the pages from here as well. Just kind of makes the page nice and clean. Nothing else has changed. You notice my header's the same, my nav's the same, my footer's the same, my main. So let's take a look at the other pages, and then we'll take a look at the code that goes along with some of this as well. So the menu, I put an iframe embedded into this page. You can watch this video; it actually works, and it'll talk a little bit more about embedding the inline iframe for you. Notice I put that sitemap down here as well, and then directions. It's all about tables here. So here's some information about the table and inside the table, and I put a caption with the table and styled it in CSS. Let's take a look at on the home page. Let's just make this mobile and see what happens when we take it to a mobile. And so the best way I know how to test out a mobile without downloading some extra equipment for you guys is just to resize the screen. So I'm going to take this screen back out into what I would call probably an iPad or maybe a tablet screen. Notice it resized. It still got the wrapper. The body was that purple color. Let's just resize it a little bit more. Notice too, my nav is here on the side, and when I resize this a little bit more and keep it going in, notice at some point in time, and this could be like a iPad screen, this could be a mini iPad, but I move my nav up here to the top. My picture's still showing because we don't mind if usually we have an iPad or something, a tablet, we're still connected to the internet. So let's take this in even just a little bit more. And notice when I take that in a little bit more, maybe this is a oversized cell phone. Trying to think of something a little bit that size. But notice how my menu changed and my font changed, and because I don't want to waste anybody's bandwidth, I took away that picture, so they're just looking for information if they're coming out here on their phone. And so we can resize that even more and notice, wow, that text gets pretty small here. Nothing changed here in my footer. I didn't change this layout, this heading. I didn't change that in the actual mobile query itself. I simply left that size. Now you can choose to make that a little bit smaller. You'll write that in your mobile query. So let's take a look at our menu and how that affected that iframe video. I resized that video. You can find that code in just a minute. I'll show you where all that's at, or you can right click on this screen and get the code yourself. Let's take that back out. Notice when I take this back out, my movie is changing as I pull this back out. Notice when I hit that little iPad screen here, my movie made it just a little bit bigger. My menu went back up to the top, and then once we get back into full mode, maybe this is a smaller, like a Sony Vaio, or maybe a little 12-inch computer screen. Um, it still works great here. There's a little bit of scrolling involved. I have my wrapper back on here. Notice how all that works. Okay. So let's go and let's look at, make sure I did my table right. I haven't even checked this. So let's take a look at the table. Here's the table, captions up here, table. Let's see if we can resize this. So when we resize that, here's that iPad, and we keep resizing back down to that little bitty screen, and here's my table. Wow, must have wrote something good. So here's my table, and it resized everything perfectly the way it's supposed to be. Okay, so with that being said, let's take a look at how's all this happening. So you can right click on that code at any point in time and view the source. And you can also click on the style sheet. So if I right click on this and I say view page source, you can see all of all of the things, the meat of the page. And if you want to see the style sheet, all you have to do is, I like to right click on this and say open that in a new tab. And when you open it in a new tab, here's everything that is associated with that style sheet. So let's take a look at the style sheet. And by the way, I validated everything, and everything validates. So a couple of things that you'll need for your project. Let's start at the top. There's some meta tags. The only other one that I require you to, well, there's two other ones that I require you to have. You had that character set, the UTF-8. You'll also need a description. So a description meta tag, this says, hey, here's what this website, here's what this page is all about. So you can change that content by each page. I left mine the same on each page just to give you an idea. Now, these are optional. You can put in keywords, HTML, CSS, whatever keywords you want to associate with this page. You can put in an author, and I put my name in here, but keep in mind, if you plan on submitting this for the competition and you put an author meta tag up here, you will need to change this, and I will be shooting out information soon about how to enter the contest for the web design for the cash prizes, and you'll get a valid participant ID, and that you'll have to change it out here. But here's the other thing that's required. Here's that viewport. So here's the viewport. The viewport says, hey, the browser, if you see that I am not in a full browser, I want you to scale this page for that browser. And then, of course, you have your link to your style sheet. And this is what we call a shiv, and you'll need this. So if anybody is out there and they're cruising through your web pages on IE9, I'm sorry, this is shim. Sorry, IE9 does not behave well with HTML anything. Of course, IE doesn't behave well with anything, period, most of the time. So to make it behave, we put a little shim code in here, and all you have to do is come out here and copy this from Pacman to Pacman, post this under your link for your style sheet, and make sure it's still in the head and you're off and running. Okay, so I told you I didn't change anything except that footer. And when you want to put a sitemap in there, I just added the anchor tags for each one of my pages. That's all I did. I didn't put it in a UL. I didn't put it in an LI. I just simply put the anchor tag and let the CSS for the footer control everything about that anchor tag. I put in some non-breaking spaces in between my anchor tags, just because I didn't want them sitting on top of each other and I don't know, making it look cluttered down there at the bottom. So that was just me. You can pretty that up as much as you want. Okay. Another thing that I will point out, if you wanted to put a caption on your table, or it has to be inserted immediately after the table tag. And if you're going to code this, let's take a look at the style sheet for that. You have to code this as table space caption. That tells it to look in the table, and anything in the table labeled caption, I'm going to have a font family associated with that, or whatever. If you wanted to do a font color, you wanted to style it, size it, whatever you wanted to do, you can write that here under your table caption and make that behave that way. Okay, so let's walk through the CSS for just a little bit, and let's see some things that have changed. I didn't change anything on the nav LI. Everything's working here. So anything for a mobile query, anything that you have written under your main CSS, you'll have to also write mobile query for that if you want it to change. So say for instance, let's just go look at the mobile query. So your mobile query, it is in its own curly bracket system. So you'll have to have this at media only screen max width. I'm asking you on your projects to do a max width mobile query of 1024 and a max width of 768. Some people like to go ahead and write in 480. That's for those really tiny the cell phones, but I don't ask that of you. I just ask that you write these two media queries. So in my first media query, for say that iPad screen, I still took control over my wrapper. I took away a few things. So anything that you wrote up here, let's just take a look at that wrapper. So anything that you write up here in the wrapper in the regular query, unless you change it in the mobile query, it will inherit these values. And so I didn't change the background color of it. I didn't change the color of my text on it. Width, margin, and min width. Those are things that, if you'll look down here, I did change, and I zeroed those out because I wanted the browser to have the ability to change all of the things that needed to change to resize. Okay, so anything that's up here, so you notice that when we looked at that earlier, that still had the color, it still had the background color. If you wanted to, you can change it. So if there's something that you wanted to change when they're looking at it on their iPad or on their iPhone or a Droid, I forget those are out there. If you wanted it to change for that, you'll have to rewrite that down here in your mobile query. Now, I highly suggest if you are making changes, you've got everything written just right within your CSS. You like the way it works, you like the way it displays. Then when you start writing your mobile queries, change one thing at a time. So work on one section at a time. So maybe you want to look and see what the wrapper is going to do in a mobile query. So write you some code for your wrapper, save it, run it, and see what it looks like. Okay, one thing at a time. When you make too many changes with your code, um, it will you can't tell what happened, what piece of that code did the wrong thing, so you can go back and fix it. So I always tell students one line of code at a time. Now, when I'm writing my media queries, usually I'll do blocks, and then within that block, I'll make one change at a time. So, if I didn't, maybe I did want a box shadow still on my iPad. I could have put maybe a pixel of 2 or something in there for a box shadow. Or maybe I wanted to recolor it. So those are things that you want to fix as you go along. Now, your wrapper, your body, your main, they should be in your first media query, and you should rewrite your nav. You want to tell your nav exactly how you want it to behave. And you notice that I took my nav li, so that list, I told it to go inline block. Okay, and then I gave it some padding. I gave it that width and the bold and the border style. I took that away. When you zero out that padding and the margin, it lets the browser position that for you. Okay, I told you that I didn't change the header on my iPad screen, and I changed it here on my smaller screen. I made that font size to 125%. So you can readjust that font size if it looked too big for you. Take it off. Originally on this website, I had a background image in my header, and if you have images, usually we take those out for our phones. And so anytime you want to take an image out for your phone, like that figure, I wrote a figure, remember the flower on my home page? So on the phone, I say display none. So I don't want it to be taking up anybody's bandwidth, so I just take that away. Now, I did tell you that I had to write some code for that phone for my embedded movie, and so here's where I put that. I made a class selector. Yes, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, I made a class. Sorry, I got sidetracked. And so on the class selector, the position of the my iframe, this relative, when you put this as relative and you make the position absolute, then this iframe will sit wherever this iframe is sitting. So notice I have a dot my iframe, and then I just have a dot my iframe. then the iframe code that I wrote within my page is going to sit relative inside of this iframe. It's kind of like putting a frame inside of a frame. Now, if you don't like some of the sizes that are associated with it and you want to change it, a couple of places that I would suggest changing. So padding on the bottom, the highest that you should take this up is to 56.25%, and the highest width is 100%. So you can play with the width here and the padding bottom to show a different size on that iframe. Everything else lets the browser take the control over that for that small. Now, you might also be asking, hey, what is this desktop and mobile IDs doing in here? Well, the display inline and display none, say for instance, you put a telephone number in your website. You have to have this little piece of code in your actual CSS, and then you'll have to have that little piece of code in your iPhone CSS or Droid phone, excuse me. And what this does is it allows that little piece of code to actually work within your pages when it hits that particular when it hits the particular device that it's on. Okay, so I like to also code that in because a lot of people will click on that phone number when you're on your web page, and that will allow them to be able to click on it and use it. So if you ever wonder when you're ordering a pizza how you could pull up their website, see a phone number, hold your phone thumb down on it, and it says call and allows you to call, well, this is a little piece of code that makes that happen. Okay, if you have any questions about this, I know it's kind of, this was a quick video. I'm going to put this code out there. I have also emailed you some more information about making pages responsive. That's what these mobile queries are all about, is making it responsive. You can ask that, hit me up. I'll be more than happy to go out and explain anything that's out here. Or if you're making trouble making it work, hey, just let me know. I'll be happy to help you out with that too. Hope this helps.